It was a moment considered unimaginable in 21st century America. The U.S. Supreme Court eliminating the constitutional right to abortion. The bans were immediate, along with the horror stories of shuttered clinics and women denied emergency medical care.
I'll never forget one of the doctors just ripping off his gloves, throwing them at the trash and saying, "I can't help you anymore. You have to go out of state."
Almost a year later, the landscape of abortion access is even worse. Republicans remain focused on pushing restrictive laws that Americans overwhelmingly reject.
The body inside of the mom's body is not her body, not her body, not her choice.
The Supreme Court may have empowered the states to reshape abortion law, but reproductive rights remain a national issue that the Biden-Harris administration and Congress must respond to forge a roadmap for the work that lies ahead. Tonight, from Dallas, in a state considered ground zero in the national fight over abortion rights, this is 1 Year Post Roe, a readout special with Vice President Kamala Harris.
Hello, and thank you for joining me on this special edition of The Readout. My guest for the hour is Vice President Kamala Harris. But because this is such an important issue to so many Americans, we also wanted to bring around this table people whose lives and work were directly affected by the elimination of the right to an abortion. Joining me are Genesis Sanchez, an abortion rights advocate, Amanda Zurawski, lead plaintiff in the abortion access lawsuit against the state of Texas, Shannon Brewer, executive director of the Las Cruces Women's Health Center in New Mexico, and Dr. Todd Ivey, who is an OBGYN right here in the state of Texas. I want to thank all of you for being here, but I do want to start with you, Madam Vice President. And we know this is a big news cycle. There's lots of news going on. But we really wanted to focus on this because this was a huge loss, I think, for so many people. And I appreciate you being here for this conversation. But I would love to know first how you felt, not only as the first woman Vice President of the United States, but also as a former prosecutor, as a mamala to two lovelies, as an auntie, as a woman, as an American, to that moment when you knew that Roe was gone.
So, Joy, first of all, thank you for bringing us together for this incredibly important conversation 4 days before we will recognize 1 year since the Dobbs decision came down. I was actually that day when I heard that the highest court in our land took a constitutional right from the women of America, from the people of America. I was that day on my way from D.C. to Illinois to do an event on maternal mortality with Lauren Underwood. Because, you know, the irony of that moment couldn't be more clear in terms of the disconnect between those who are fighting to attack this right and deprive people of this privacy right, and those who also have not been leaders on an issue like maternal mortality. But I was on my way to Illinois, and you know, in the litany of things that I am, including a mamala and all of the other things, I'm also someone who was motivated to become a lawyer because of people like Thurgood Marshall. One of my inspirations was RBG, and the idea that the highest court in our land just did that and rolled back rights that had been recognized was incredibly shocking. I knew it might happen. The decision had been leaked. I called my husband, I called Doug immediately then, because he was the only one that I could really just like let it out with. Words not for television at this moment. But again, you know, the thing about our nation, I believe, one of the strengths of our nation is, yes, we are a work in progress. And the progress we have made, one of the attributes has been about our collective fight for the expansion of rights. And this was such a stark restriction of rights that had been recognized. And I immediately knew when that decision came down what it would mean for real people almost immediately in our country, who, for the most part, many will suffer in silence and are alone and without resources of many types. And I was extremely sad for that reason as well. when that decision came down. Angry, you know, and extremely sad about what it would mean for real people.
You know, and I know that, you know, there is the great inspiration of Thurgood Marshall and all of the great jurists that have been on the court in the past. But I also have seen an interview with your high school best friend.
Yes.
Who talked about your other inspiration for becoming a lawyer. Your best friend, when you were in high school, suffered incest in her home and ended up living with you and your mom and your sister because of it. And I just, you know, when you think about women who you were defending as a prosecutor, that they had been abused in the state of Texas and in the many other states that have now, through trigger laws or affirmatively banned abortion, a woman who was in the position of your best friend, if they tried to obtain an abortion as a result of being pregnant, in this state, there's a bounty that could be placed on them, a cash bounty on anyone who helped them. They could be committing a crime. Right. Any doctor who helped them could go to jail for life and lose their license and be fined. I just wonder how you process that as a former prosecutor.
So you are correct. My best friend in high school, I learned that she was being molested by her stepfather. And I immediately said, well, you have to come live with us. And I called my mother and I told her, and my mother was like, of course she has to come live with us. And she did. She came to live with us. And that was one of the reasons that I wanted to become a prosecutor, to protect people who have been the subject of such abuse. And most of my career as a prosecutor was focused on crimes against women and children, crimes of violence. And so one of the issues on the topic of the Dobbs decision is, to your point, laws being proposed and passed that make no exception, Joy, for rape and incest. And I'm going to be explicit about what that means. It means that so-called leaders are saying that after an individual has experienced such a crime of violence, a violation to their body, and surviving that these so-called leaders would say to that same person, and the next decision you make about your body is not yours either. That's immoral. That's immoral. To take away her ability to decide what happens to her body next. And so when I think about what is happening with these proponents of this approach, you know, I think that I think that one attribute of true leadership is to have some sense of empathy and understanding, as opposed to judgment. When people have had those kinds of experiences. And these are the things that are at play. And I do want to say, because I think it's very important to say, on this issue, one does not have to abandon their faith or deeply held beliefs to agree that the government should not be telling her what to do with her body.
Yeah. And, you know, sitting beside you is Shannon Brewer. And, you know, when people talk about the end of Roe, they usually say the end of Roe, or they just say Dobbs. But the second half of that case is Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health. And I have a picture of Jackson Women's Health. It was the pink house. Yeah. It was the last abortion clinic in Mississippi, not just in Jackson, Mississippi, but in the state. And it was your lawsuit against the state for eliminating access to abortion that winds up being this case, Dobbs versus Jackson, Mississippi, that triggers the end of abortion rights. And I you know, and we're looking just at this image of the house that it is now in a consignment shop. I remember driving by it not long ago and seeing it and being sort of shocked when someone told me that was the pink house.
Yes.
And I wonder in that moment when you heard that Dobbs was gone, how you felt.
I felt like we had gone back in time, actually. That's what I felt. And still to this day, that's what I feel. I feel we've let women down. We've set things back so far, and it's going to take forever to get it back. If that ever happens again, it won't be in our lifetime. That's how I felt at that time. I felt that all the fighting we had done was all in vain at that moment. It was just, you have all types of feelings when that took place. From staff, friends, doctors, escorts, everybody who helped with the movement. It was very emotional for everybody.
Yeah. I mean, when I think of you, I think of TRM Howard, Dr.